it was just off to this great start from being broke, from being 113 grand in the hole, from them buying a 6-unit building that was taking me under, that was costing a heck of a lot more than I was making on it, to suddenly realizing all I had to do was find good deals, negotiate good deals, and sell them to other investors that wanted to actually do the deal.
Yeah.
I'm in heaven.
If you're a real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show is for you. Learn secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field who will guide you on your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so you can take your commissions and turn them into cash flow. Here's your host, Randall. Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome back. Today we have the one and only Mr. Tom Zeeb. He's the president of Traction REIA, Real Estate Investor Association. He's a speaker, an entrepreneur, and host of the Art and Science of Real Estate Negotiation podcast. We have a great conversation. We're talking about negotiating with sellers, how he's targeting sellers for his wholesale business, how he got into real estate in general, and just some of the tactics that he uses. So you're going to get something out of the show if you are looking at some negotiating tactics. We talk about how, as an agent, you can work with investors, which is something you should be doing or should consider doing if you're looking for a niche. So you're going to get something out of the show. Please go on, rate and review wherever you are. Helps us out a ton with the reach, with the guests that we get on the show and all of that. As a reminder, we have the RAM Capital Fund that we are raising capital for. We are buying single family houses or creating notes in the Texas market, and you can earn up to a 10% return on your money for investing in that fund with us. Check it out at the link in the show notes, and let's jump in. Here we go. All right, Tom, it's good to have you on the show. Welcome in. I wanted to get started. I know that you have some whitewater rafting experience in your background, man. So I always like talking about sports and that sort of thing. So what happened? You had this crazy accident, and then something got you into real estate from there. Like, give me the breakdown, like what actually went on there.
Yeah, it was my first time whitewater rafting, and I was doing it on the other side of the world in India, in the Ganges River, with a bunch of buddies, because I was escaping from the misery of my life back at home, which was an absurd amount of debt, stuck in a job that I didn't like anymore, tired of everything. And yet, what am I supposed to do? Because I'm saddled down by the debt. So I just escape for 2 weeks, take my vacation, spend money I didn't really have, put it on credit cards, and go whitewater rafting with a bunch of buddies. And I couldn't stay on the raft at one point. We went through a very rough class 5 rapid, and I went flying over the edge. And then I was sucked underwater without much of a chance to catch my breath. And there was a lot of tumbling and turning and bashing in the rocks. And then you start to think a lot of things as you realize you're probably going to black out pretty soon from not being able to breathe. And the weird thing was, I didn't get scared at that point. I got angry. I was angry at what I haven't done anything in life. I was young. I was 23, 24. And I said, something is way out of whack here. And I got to fix it. If I get out of this, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to pay off my debt. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to get out of the corporate job I don't like. I'm going to all of this. But the thing was, I had no idea how to do that. So as I came out of the water and all my buddies are laughing at me for going over the edge, I'm thinking, no, something's changed. I've got ideas now. I've got a direction. Yeah, I had inspiration, but I didn't have any tools.
So how did that turn into real estate? I mean, I get. So you had like a near-death experience. It sounds like class 5 rapids first go around. That's a pretty straight into the deep end sort of deal too.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. I mean, that's wild. We were just looking at going to Colorado to do some of that ourselves. So, but I don't think it's class 5, but
that's fine.
Yeah. So
class 5 is pretty rough.
Again, I mean, you get out, and what kind of corporate gig were you doing? Like, what were you doing, and what was the transition like?
I was living in Washington, D.C., so the job was a cross between IT and politics. We did software for lobbyists or government affairs divisions of corporations.
Okay. All right. And you were just done with that, like not happening anymore?
I mean, it was interesting at first, but there was a point where I was also frustrated. I don't like the 9-to-5 grind. I don't particularly like being told what to do or when to do it or how to do it. And I really was resenting being locked down kind of in a salary.
Yeah.
But when it didn't matter how great I did, there wouldn't be a raise till next year. And even then it wasn't that much. I'm thinking, wait, why shouldn't this be more commiserate on what I do? But it wasn't. And I realized the only way to get that was to feed this entrepreneurial spirit that had been welling up inside of me, but I didn't feel like it didn't get unleashed until I was drowning.
Got it. So again, how did you find real estate? Because of the myriad of ideas and options and things that you could do as an entrepreneur, like real estate is just one drop in the bucket, you know? So
Yeah, it wound up seeming to be the only accessible one right out of the gate. And the idea only came to me because when I got home and I was sitting there frustrated and realized I was still stuck. I was stuck in debt. I was still drowning. I was drowning financially. I was drowning with no time. And it was like, great, here's that sense of drowning again. This is great. And then out of the blue, a friend hands me a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I think, I mean, probably 90% of your listeners have read. Well, it hit me like a ton of bricks when I read it. I went, oh, wow. And then I turned back to the first page and read it again because it was really, really speaking to me and bothering me. I went, this is how I felt when I was drowning. This is my way out. This is my ticket forward. And he says to go buy multi-unit real estate, basically buy cash flowing rental properties. So it doesn't tell you how, but I was ginned up and excited, ready to go. And I just dove in head first.
Lights the fire. That's man, that's reminiscent of mine. Like when I got out of college and I was 22, 23, I went to live with a guy who was my age, same birthday, went to high school with him, but he had houses and cars and all these things. I was like, what are you doing? And he gave me that book. Same, like, and I was in the same boat. Like I had to borrow money to get back home from living, it was wild, but you read that book and it lights a fire and gives you an idea of something that's possible that you just did not know. I think that's the beauty of that book.
Yeah, there's a whole other world out there, except that you haven't been taught that world. The world, it's there, but for some reason people don't talk about it. That usually the corporate area or the school area you've been doesn't reveal that world is actually legitimate there and totally awesome when you really get into it.
Yeah. So did you start with multifamily?
Yes, I did.
So you started in so what was your first deal like? How'd you break into the business?
It was a total complete disaster. This is back 2001. So,
okay.
They're throwing money at anybody that could fog a mirror, which included me. I'm 113 grand in debt from school and car and food and entertainment. And let's be frank, really bad financial habits. So I'm 113 grand in the hole, and yet they're throwing a mortgage at me. And I bought a 6-unit building in New York City, in Brooklyn, and a neighborhood called Bedford-Stuyvesant. And it almost took me under. I was drowning yet again. This like drowning motif keeps coming back and back. It was bad because I didn't know how to do anything. I just knew I was supposed to buy, if you just buy real estate, everything is going to work out great. Well, it wasn't working out so great. I had 6 professional tenants that weren't paying a dime, but the bank didn't care. I still had to pay them.
Yeah. So did you buy it too high? The tenants were bad. I mean, was it just the tenant situation or was it kind of all the above?
Yeah, price was probably about fine. The tenants were bad. My due diligence, which should have discovered that nobody was actually paying. It doesn't matter what the rent roll should have been. It only matters what it actually was. I missed all of that because I was a total rookie, a young kid that knew nothing.
Hey everybody, Randal Cleared here with a special shout out to our friends over at Envone. If you're looking to diversify your investment portfolio, you've got to go check them out. It's envone.com. It's a crowdfunding platform with a wide range of investment opportunities, things like real estate investing and even bourbon barrel investing. So check them out. Envone hosts our crowdfund. It's actually a single-family real estate investment fund that we have launched with them, and we've had an awesome experience working with Levy and his team. They're super responsive, very quick to assist us with things that we need, and they have crowdfunding down to a science. Go ahead and check out episode 154, where Levy and I discuss crowdfunding in detail and how it can help you either invest or raise capital. And check this out. As a friend of the pod, launch your crowdfund with Envone, and you're going to get an exclusive 10% discount when you head over to envone.com/ABC, or simply call Levy and his team at 475-800-8716 and mention Agents Building Cash Flow. Go crush it. Happy investing. Talk to you later. Yeah. So there's something to be said, though, about just trial by fire, getting in, doing it, and learning by experience. I mean, so did you turn that property around? You get the tenants out? I don't know what New York laws are like now or back then, I guess. But I know has been some rent control. So like at the time, what happened? Did you get them out?
Landlord friendly New York City. I couldn't think of a spot to buy first property. No, I wound up losing the property.
Okay.
Let it go on a short sale.
Okay.
And get rid of it because it wasn't, I mean, it just, the situation was so bad. I wasn't going to get out of it. It was bad news. So, but I kept focusing on real estate. I discovered that there were actually groups of actual real estate investors. It wasn't just in books. And I walked into my local real estate investors association, or REIA, and I went, holy cow, this is great. There's people that do this, and there's people that seem to do landlording successfully, and there's people that are doing rehabbing, and then there's these people I can't figure out that do wholesaling. And I wound up wholesaling my first deal close to the home. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, even with the property in New York. And I found the property close to the home, and I wound up assigning the contract for just shy of 23 grand.
Yeah.
That changed everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's the one spark you need. You're like, holy crap, it works.
It actually works. This isn't just late night TV. This isn't just some random book. It actually works.
That's funny. So was it just from being in the REIA and talking to people? Did you get contracts from them and they taught you how to do it, or you read a ton of books? I mean, YouTube University wasn't as big as it is now.
No, YouTube wasn't. I don't even think YouTube was functioning. If anything, we were allowed 30-second videos.
That's right.
No, it was reading books, usually fairly old books from the library or sitting around the bookstore because I couldn't afford to buy any. And then it was the REIAs. My intent when I put it in a contract, my intent was to rehab it. Yeah. I'd go for the big bucks. But somebody came up to me at the meeting and said, hey, I want to buy that from you right now as it is. I said, but how? I mean, I'm not done with it. I haven't fixed it. Mm-hmm. And he kind of laughed at me and said, look, kid, I don't think you know what you're doing, but why don't you just assign it to me? I'll pay you to take the contract off your hands. And I said, you can do that legally? Wow. And the check was $22,819.66. I mean, that literally was amazing. And my second deal paid out $5,000. Yeah. So it was just off to this great start from being broke, from being 113 grand in the hole, from them buying a 6-unit building that was taking me under, that was costing a heck of a lot more than I was making on it, to suddenly realizing all I had to do was find good deals, negotiate good deals, and sell them to other investors that wanted to actually do the deal. Yeah. I'm in heaven.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing with wholesaling though. Like, you have to get those deals at such a deep discount. So what is it that you learned throughout that process that allowed you to negotiate those deals well below market value so that then you can turn around and sell them to someone else for a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, I found that it wasn't like I was going after anything that everyone else wasn't. A rehabber needs a pretty darn good discount. Mm-hmm. I mean, based off of what the future numbers will be. And the landlord usually wants a good discount, either on the value of the property or at least vis-a-vis what the rent roll is. So I found that as long as I could do a little bit better than that, I'd have my wholesale fees. And the thing was that rehabbers got busy rehabbing. They were always busy. They were like swamped with all these problems, and they stopped marketing. And the same thing with landlords. Landlords got busy dealing with tenants and toilets, and they would stop marketing. I went, well, if I just focus on marketing, which is something I actually like, and then I negotiate, which is something I totally love, then I could turn around and sell to the other people that are too busy to actually do the full part of their business. So, this is a match made in heaven.
Yeah, yeah. So what kind of marketing were you doing? And do you still do? Like, what's your, let's fast forward a little bit. Like, what's your business like today? You were doing this wholesaling 2001, 2, 3. Do you still wholesale? Do you fix and flip? Do you apartments? Like, what are you doing now?
A little bit of everything. Primarily, it's 85% wholesale. I like a quick in and out. Yeah. I like the ability to help people, motivated sellers. And, the key is to look for someone that's motivated. They have a pretty big problem going on in their life. And that makes price not the number one issue. It's more solving their problem is their number one issue. And they need to solve it fast. They need a fast solution. And usually an injection of cash to them will solve that solution. And so that creates the situation that we're looking for. They maybe can't wait around to list the property and see what happens on the open market. I think particularly now as the market softens, that's becoming more true. Where before you could at least try to list it and you might get what you want. But as things get softer, then it's not as attractive. It's easier just to, hey, this is a done deal. Let's go with it and make it happen. So when I search for those people, it works out well. I search for those people, the types of problems they have that show up in public record. Like they've inherited a property, or they're going through divorce, or they're going through a bankruptcy, or something negative has happened, and they need help getting out of that situation. And usually selling their house can help them out of that difficult situation.
Okay. So you're finding them, are you direct mail? What are some of the tactics you're using to actually reach out to them?
Yep, direct mail is big. So, you develop a list, a courthouse, and you mail them. You mail them letters, you mail them postcards with a message that matches what their situation is. That way they go, oh, yeah, that's me. Let me call.
Yep.
Do some more broadcast advertising, like targeted ads in newspapers or classified sections or certain web portals. And one of the biggest things this last couple of years has been driving for deals using a specific app. I use the deal machine driving for deals.
Yeah. Somebody, literally the postman was here at my office the other day, and he walked in. He's like, "Hey man, you do real estate? I'm trying to get into it." I was like, "Did you see more deals than most people just because you're driving around?" I was like, "Here's an app." So I showed him Deal Machine, and he was like, "Oh, what? That's crazy, man." So
it's beautiful.
yeah, it's a pretty solid little setup. Okay, so again, so deal volume right now, you're wholesaling. Is that your number one deal? If it's 80% of it, so how many deals are you trying to do a month? What's your average deal size on a profit?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I aim for a deal a month.
Okay. And then
lifestyle is the center of my business. I like to keep it focused. I aim for a deal a month, which means some months there's 3 deals, and then 4 months will go by with none.
Yeah.
So that's aiming for about 12 a year, right? People, how you maintain a deal a month? You can't, because the world, it's just crazy. So you would need to have that on average. So 12 is a good year. 15 is a great year. 10 would be a little bit off.
Are you only doing Florida, or where are you doing deals?
No, I still do the Washington, D.C. area where I used to live. I moved to Florida 3 years ago.
Okay. And so average deal size for wholesale up there, what are you getting typically?
DC area has been higher. DC area, I'll usually get between 20 and 25,000 a wholesale.
Okay.
Florida, I've been more in the 10 to 12 range.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting because we got out of wholesaling a while back, and then I started buying deals from wholesalers recently just because, we're doing an owner finance exit. And so seeing the spreads back in the day, I was always tracking it, seeing what they were getting, and they got up to 85%, sometimes 90% ARV, because you had all these iBuyers coming in, all kinds of stuff happening, And now I think the prices are softening. I don't know what you're seeing, but it definitely seems like prices on the back end of the retail flips are actually coming down, and there's a lot of inventory on the market from retail flips. And so my pricing has gone even lower. So again, I don't know what you're seeing on the actual sales side when you're wholesaling these things. What's your target in that area? Are you selling 70% deals, or are you guys still a little bit higher?
Yeah, I try to aim right for at 70, because when the market's hotter, people would slide up to 72, 73, 75. But as it cools, they tend to want to tighten the belt, and you're dipping into the high 60s. So I'm aiming for around 70 if it's justifiable. But yeah, when I look at the slowness of the market, and when I look at the listings that I have tracked that come back as price reduce, I go, okay, I'm not going to be trying to hit above 70% for a while until that balances out, because people get nervous.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you'll move your properties or keep your investors happier with that. So we have a lot of agents that listen. How can an agent work with an investor or wholesaler, and what are some tactics, I guess, that they could use when working with? And I know are you the president of a REIA?
I am.
So I'm sure you have a lot of investors in your REIA. How can they either work with an agent, or how can agents reach out to investors? What are some tips that you have there?
Yeah, it's a great question, because there's that kind of aren't investors and agents oil and water? Don't they never mix? Sometimes there's difficulties mixing, but when you get it right, it could be a beautiful thing. I mean, the agents that I've done business with over the years get a lot of business, because if my buyers are rehabbers, well, when they finish that property and it's bright, shiny, beautiful, and ready to go on the open market to get top dollar, the only spot you're really going to get that property is by listing it with an agent. So it behooves these agents to become close with rehabbers that they could resell their properties for.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you buy a property from a homeowner, or you list a property from a homeowner, you might get repeat business in 10, 15 years when they resell. But you focus on an investor, you have the potential of doing multiple deals a year.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great way to set it up. Now, what are investors after from agents? Well, we need some data. It might be access to the MLS, might need you to run comps now and then. The way I set it up is, look, hey, Mr. and Miss Agent, I'm an investor. I'm not licensed. There's some data that you can pull more easily from the MLS than I could on my own. So it's public record data, but if you pull it for me, then I'm going to bring my listings to you, or I'm going to give you the leads that I can't do anything with. Because quite honestly, Randall, when I do my marketing, 9 out of 10 leads want full price and no fancy terms.
Yep.
That doesn't do me any good as an investor, but it's perfect for an agent. So I say, look, you're going to get all those. Now, I think you guys as agents understand it's a numbers game as well. If 1 out of every 20 leads turns into a listing, you're a happy camper, right?
Yeah, yeah. What's your conversion rate? So leads out, like how much are you spending to get a deal is what it kind of boils down to.
Depends on the list. So, for example, I love out-of-state absentee owners, but I do about a 1 in 37, where when I get the probate, I'm more a 1 in 11, 1 in 12, but there's not as many of those.
Yep.
So it could take you longer. So that's why I like the striker rate, as you call it, is based on kind of what type of list am I after. Some are more motivated than others. Internet leads, I fly up into around 1 in 63. So internet leads are not as high quality for me, which means I try to not tighten the belt, but tighten the filter on it so that less leads come through, because otherwise I'm wasting a lot of time sorting, sifting, and separating through all those leads to get to the one good one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So the number one lead source for you right now, is it direct mail? Is it calling? Are you doing any cold calling? You got any?
I don't love cold calling.
Okay.
We do a little bit of it. I don't personally. I have some students do it, particularly if they need that kind of baptism by fire to get really good at the phone. But it tires you out. So I'd rather have warm calling, like mix the calling in with the direct mail. So my number one sources are direct mail, letters, postcards, tied with Deal Machine.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Deal Machine. Okay. So do you just give access to a bunch of people? You're like, hey, I have a bunch of minions running around getting Deal Machine on their phone, sending leads that come back to you, like the mailman, or like, or how do you set that up?
Yeah, mailmen are great bird dogs like that.
Yep.
If you have any sort of bird dog teams, it's perfect for that. Otherwise, my students, I don't have them send me the leads. I let them work on them themselves. I'm big on, like, just philosophically, I'd rather teach you how to fish rather than just throw fish at you, because then you can actually go off on your own and be fine. So I'm like, hey, set up your Deal Machine, set up your direct mail. And I show them exactly what to do, give them all the materials and the messaging that connects, the letters, the postcards, customize them out, their name, their phone number, get it out there. And now let's deal with what comes back. Because once they're trained how to do it, they're good as gold. They're good forever. I don't want them needing me over time.
Yeah. Let's talk specifics on marketing then, because I like, copywriting and knowing what type of piece to send. You mentioned that you're doing some probate. So is that typically a letter and in a number 10 envelope, handwritten? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's some of the nitty gritty tactics that you got that work?
That was a yes, a no, and a kind of. So is it a letter? Yes, it is a letter, because probate means somebody died. So it's a little more gentle to put it in a letter than splash it out on a postcard. It just feels. No, it's not a number 10 envelope. And if people aren't aware of what that is, everyone knows what it is. They just may not know the name. Just that standard rectangular envelope. No, that's kind of boring and blends in. So I encourage people to go get a different size and shape envelope, usually more square. So it looks like an invitation or a condolence card or a wedding announcement or graduation, whatever. So that way it stands out a little bit, and to not have it be plain white, get that in a color. And then with handwriting, I said that was the kind of maybe. Handwriting will stand out. It does help to get your letter opened. I just don't think you necessarily need to be handwriting them yourself. There are enough really good handwriting fonts, so you can just still mail merge it and run it through your printer. And if you take a handwriting font on blue ink, it looks pretty darn good.
Yeah. Good call. I like that response, because at number 10 looks like a bill. Like if you're sending that out, it's the standard bill size. And so the negative connotation already associated with getting that letter as a recipient, you're like, oh God, what is this? So, all right. So that's some good advice there too. So are you doing this? Do you have a mail house, or do you do this at your house and you're just like, okay, I'm going to send out, because you're not dumping like hundreds of thousands of mailers at a time. Speaking of the mailman, there he is.
Yeah, there he is.
Got any deals, man? Yeah.
No, in the very early days, I would address everything, stamp everything, envelopes, right? But no, I do it all through mail shops now. I want it easy. I want it done. It's easy to repeat. Just, design what goes on the postcard, upload the list, pop in my credit card number, click send, it's done. It's much better that way.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not using a mail house, if you're trying to do a lot of direct mail and you're not using a mail house, like you should reconsider. There's a number of them around the country that you can get a super low rate for sending out a lot of postcards. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's talk a little bit about just negotiating in general. I know that that's a big thing for you. And so when you're going out and you're having these conversations with sellers, are you the one that's having the conversation still? Do you have a team that is talking to the sellers? Like how does that look before we dive into this?
Yeah. Combination. So it kind of depends how the lead came in. I want to get on the phone and actually negotiate with someone once they've kind of passed the initial test to see how they, are they at least they have an outboard chance of becoming a positive deal. Fine. I want to talk to them because talking to me builds rapport. Like there's rapport being built between you and me right now. There's rapport being built between both of us and your listeners, purely from the fact that you're spending time listening to somebody. So that's an important part of the process. So yeah, I want to have the secretary that answers the phone get some basic questions as a screen, but I don't want the rapport built with her. I want it built with me. So it's the same thing if you're using a call center or something else to answer your calls. I don't want a lot of rapport built with them. I want them to be more of a gatekeeper. But once it pops through to me, I've got to spend the time talking to somebody because that conversion is going to happen in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So when for your flow, when do they actually get through the gatekeeper to you? Like, what is your trigger that it's like, oh, I'm interested, or is it, hey, they gave me a price, or what's the trigger?
That I've seen some movement that shows some degree of motivation and flexibility. Okay. So, maybe they've been asked primarily, how much are you asking for the property? How long you've been trying to sell it? What do you think it's worth? And if there's movement on those numbers and the answers to those questions, I start to get a sense of this person's got a little bit of a soft bottom. I can move this further down by applying some good negotiation skills.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just a give me my number type of person, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I asked you, how much are you asking for the property? 300,000. Okay. What do you think it's worth? 300,000. If I offered you all cash and close in 10 days, how much would you take for the property? 300,000.
Yeah.
Is that the best you can do? Yeah. Well, what does that sound like somebody you need to have a long conversation with?
Yeah.
No. If I say, hey, how much are you asking? 300,000. What do you think it's worth? Ooh, I don't know. Maybe might be worth 250. I don't know. Okay. Well, if I were to offer you all cash, I guess I would do 330, 335. I don't really know. Now, again, whether or not that's a deal yet, we don't know. But the fact that we've dropped $70,000 from just having a conversation tells me this person's worth spending my time on.
Yeah. So on a purely nitty-gritty tactics, how-to sort of logistics, are you getting a transcript of that conversation? Are you listening to the recording, or are you just looking at whatever is in your CRM that your secretary typed in?
Yeah.
Like how do you guys
answer the phone is give me the brief questions either via email or CRM, and I know from looking at that. So I'm looking at it in a summary, basically.
Got it.
Okay.
Now
I know how I'm going to approach it when I call back and really engage the person.
Yeah. No, I just didn't know if you were. Sorry, go ahead.
In the conversation or in the negotiation.
Yeah. I just didn't know if you would listen to the conversation to get their tone and see how they responded to those things, because that's even diving a little bit deeper, but
I don't, mostly out of time. Rather than just, I'm going to call it as long as I look at that executive summary and go, there might be something here. I'm going to generally be re-asking the same questions anyway, and start to move around. So I'll get the sense of their tone in the moment when I'm on the phone with them.
Yeah, that's huge. And so, okay, let's talk about when you're on the phone and what are some of the negotiation tactics that you use in order to drive that price to where you need it to be. Before you get to that, actually, are you researching the property prior to you having this conversation? Or is it like, hey, I know that the ARV is 200 and I have to be minimum 100,000 purchase? Where are you in the process?
If I have the address, I'll take a quick peek and a real quick look at comps if I'm not familiar with the area. I don't want to spend too much time on it, because if I spend 20, 25 minutes, half hour researching the property, and then I call them, and within 30 seconds that conversation is dead, I just lost a half hour of my life that I'll never get back. I'd rather have a conversation with them first. And then if it's still a live one and still looking good, now I'll bother to put the time in the comps and put the effort into doing a little deeper.
Yeah. No, I just think it's important to know that for if you're listening and you spend a ton of time researching, you are going to be wasting a lot of your time, right?
Yes.
Just get on, pick up the phone and call them, and then you'll find out a lot more. Okay, so now you're on the phone with them, and you don't know the ARV, you don't know anything really about the property, but you're just trying to know the person, right? So tell me some of the things that you do, some of the conversation starters or whatever it is. How does that phone call go so that you're getting to the information you need?
Main thing I'm after is, are they flexible? Are they motivated, and are they flexible on the price? So I'm starting to test for that almost immediately. I'll build a rapport at the beginning by asking some basic questions. Hey, tell me about the property. How many bedrooms, how many baths? That's a real soft question. No one's going to be offended by that. Then, hey, so why are you selling it? And maybe they open up a little bit about their situation, and you can keep kind of peeling off another layer of the onion and going deeper. Maybe the person gets avoids the pain of that and jumps over to more numerics or talk more about the situation, the condition of the property. Okay, fine. But eventually I'm going to start asking some specific things. So when I ask them for asking price, no matter what they say, I flinch. So on the phone, I'll make some noise on the phone. So Randall, say a number.
200,000.
Woo, 200,000. Woo.
Yeah.
Right. I act visibly or audibly disturbed by that number. And that initially sets their mind going, oh, wow, did I do something wrong? He doesn't like my number. Must not be right. That must not be good. So I'm already putting some downward pressure on the price. Then I'm going to aim for what I want versus what they said. So let's say I have an inkling of an idea of what I think it's worth, but we tend to meet in the middle. Right? That's just a standard thing. People meet in the middle. So what I want to do is engineer where the middle is so that the middle is exactly where I need it to be. That technique is called bracketing. So if I ask them how much and they say 300,000, well, let's say I need it at 250. So they're $50,000 high. So to make 250 my target, the middle, I have to go the same distance lower. So if they're 50 high, I've got to go 50,000 lower. So if they say 300, I've got to start at 200 to move towards the middle where everything seems to feel fair and it comes across as fair. Except that, wait a minute, that just feels like spitballing. They say 300, you say 200. So I would never offer 200,000. Instead, I use another technique called specific numbers, and I would offer something like 203,579. Because now they stop and go, oh, what's going on there? Like, how does that number sound to you? 203,579.
Sounds a little low. Sounds a little low, Tom. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that number?
It's weird. How'd you come up with that number? Like, you're curious. It also means, he didn't just throw a number out there. It sounds like he actually thought about this number. He scientifically calculated that number. He must be doing some sort of math and some sort of spreadsheet where honestly, I just threw the number out there because I like uneven specific numbers but it makes people think that they're scientifically calculated. And that's important when it comes down to it. It's funny. I was doing a deal through an agent, and a lot of times I have agents tell me, they're like, oh, don't do any of that silly negotiation stuff. That doesn't work. Agents don't like that kind of thing. I said, it does work and we are going to do it. So if you want to work with me, then you have to, because I find myself, I'm not the one saying it. If I'm working through an agent, I'm kind of pulling the strings and the agent is saying the things. And I put an offer out, ending in my classic 579, and the agent goes, how'd you come up with that? I mean, she basically flinched herself. How am I going to explain that to them? Why would the seller take that? I mean, I'll tell him you're in the numerology. I said, oh, no. Don't tell him I'm in the numerology, because I had looked up who the actual owner was. I said, they're going to think I'm flaky. No offense to anyone else, but it didn't fit the personality types. I said, no. Tell him I'm obsessive compulsive, and Matt, I'm really exact with my numbers and my math because I want to see what the response is. And I said, look, I'm not asking you to do anything wrong, but I am asking you to do this and put the number across just like I stated, because I want to see what happens. And sure enough, they had that kind of, what the hell is that? Well, that's a weird number. And then the price dropped. So see, it works. You just have to do so. Those three I use in almost everything. I start by flinching at their number. I bracket to create a distance so I can pull them down to the middle, which is engineering where I want to be. And then I throw out a specific number to really get them to think that I've put some time and effort into it.
Yeah. Anchoring at the lower,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. And then building your case as to why, or letting them sell themselves on lower. Which way do you typically go? Do they say the number, or do you get to a point where it's like, hey guys, let's just make this deal happen at 250? Like, what is?
Sure. I will still try to, you get down, if you get to an impasse at some point, let's say we're not quite at 250 yet. Let's say I'm at 260. I've got them up to 240. We're still not there yet. I could offer to split the difference, except that's not usually very wise, because if I offer to split the difference and they say yes, then I won. And I one of the negotiation principles that I like to live by is always let the other side feel like they won. I want them to feel like they're the winner. I know I'm going to win, so it's fine either way. But I said, so I instead, I would try to convince them to ask me to meet them in the middle, to ask me to split the difference and go to that 250. So that's usually a conversation, something like, gosh, Randall, you're at 240. I'm at 260. We've come so far. Isn't there anything we can do? We're so close. Be ashamed to have come this far and not be able to do a deal together.
Yep.
And then you go, oh, well, I guess I'll meet you in the middle. I'll say the middle. Oh, you mean like 250? And then I flinch again because these are all stackable. I go, 250. I might be able to do that, but I need to check with my people. Let me check with the senior people on my team, the senior people in my office, and we make sure everyone's cool with that. So I'm alluring to a higher authority, even though I don't have them, right? The buck stops there. But I don't want anyone to know that. I want them to feel more comfortable, and it keeps me, I'm in the client facing position. So I get to be the good guy and I can make the higher authority the bad guy.
Yeah. Okay. So when, do you have any data that shows like what you've been able to negotiate down? I guess that's a really strange, like, it's not something that I've ever tracked, but I
was going to say, I'm not that exact of a tracker.
Yeah. Mike,
I get great drops all the time. I mean, it's not uncommon to, like, even taking the same kind of scenario. Someone's asking 300, I'll finish at 225 or 235. It's not uncommon to take a $600,000 initial ask and wind up, nailing that for 450, 475. It's usually there's enough of these spreads in there. And sometimes, look, my biggest spread I've ever created was 65,188 from just the basic negotiation skills. But that was an older woman. She was basically preparing to die, making sure she was taking care of her estate and getting everything off the plate so she didn't create a headache for her family. And she didn't have a mortgage on the property. So the property was a mess. It wasn't in good shape. It had a tenant that wasn't paying. She was just worried about getting rid of it at all. I said, I'll happily take that off your plate, and made an initial offer. And man, I mean, we didn't even come up very much. And I went, wow. So it created this massive spread. So they're not a consistent, because it can't be consistent, because no two human beings are consistent, right? No two deals are the same. So, but I use the same techniques consistently, and that always opens it up. So I know I'm getting the best price, that I'm at their true bottom line.
So then let's take it to the other side. You're selling to a guy like me. You just, I'm the rehabber flipper. What kind of tactics are you using on me to get the highest price possible?
Yeah, I know that you are a professional in the business and you're every bit into the numbers as I am. So one of the main things I'm going to do is back up everything I say. Because if you try coming at me saying, I don't think the after repair value is really that, I'm going to have my comps really solid and ready to go to say, no, it is. If you say, the repair estimate isn't going to be, it's not that low, I'm going to say, yes, it is, and be very detailed about it. So I'll be pretty clinical on the buyer side, because my main thing is I'm putting it out there where it works for the buyer, where they want to buy at, and I know how much I have it for, which I do not reveal to them at first. So I choose a buyer, and then when they sign the contract, they find out everything. But it's only the one that I actually choose, the only person I actually choose. But I want to make sure generally that I'm backing up everything that I say with facts, with the power of the printed word, as much as possible. So that's realtor comps from the MLS. And that's a lot of photos of the property with an estimate that matches and makes sense for what that repair is going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you have you noticed just in general then on your wholesales recently, have you had to discount some of your prices because the market is different than 21, 22, 23? What's the story?
There's been a little obviously softness. Yep. And so there's been buyer nervousness about what's their outsell price going to be. Mm-hmm. And I will still back that with as solid comps as I can get. But when you're trying to keep your comps within the last few months, and suddenly everything's slowed down, and every month that goes by, there's less and less in that mix, that's difficult. So sometimes, I've got to pull the number down, and I'm okay to tighten my belt if that makes sense. I'm also okay if I need to go back to the seller and say, we need to renegotiate this.
Yeah. How does that conversation go?
Well, usually at the beginning, it goes over like a lead balloon. Nobody likes that. Hey, Tom, you told me this was the price. I said, I know. And I'm stuck right now because all of my people have looked at it. Again, I kind of blame my higher authority. All the investors on my team are looking at it, but man, the market's softening. I don't know if you've read the newspaper at all, and I could pull out those clips about everything softening and the sky is falling. I said, so we're kind of caught in that right now. Here's what I think I can move it forward. So here's what I need you to come down to, and then we renegotiate it. It's an awkward, horrible conversation. Yeah. Usually doesn't go down on the first try. Usually they need a day or two to blow off some steam. But they seem to want to stick with me because it's better than switching horses midstream.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, we had those conversations quite a bit when you had to, but our spreads, in the run up were 5 to 10, maybe 15, give or take. So anything that gets the deal done and the seller on their way gets them a sale, even if you're having to squeeze your, like you said, tighten your belt a little bit.
Yeah. Again, I'll do it if I have to. But meanwhile, the same technique I'm using with the buyers that kind of power the printed word, making sure they see what the facts are. All I have to do is go to the MLS and print out price reduce, price reduce, price reduce, price reduce, and increasing days on market. And people go, guys, look, the market's not what it used to be. These people are still trying to get the price from a couple of years ago. They're hung up on it. I understand, but they're not going to get it. So we need to come in kind of at what it should be or a few percent below so that we can actually get some interest and get this thing moved.
You have what is it? Traction REIA. So how many members is that? Is it large REIA, small REIA? You guys try to keep it tight. What's the story? What does that look like?
Large-ish. We're probably 450, 460 members nationwide. The primary groups that have in-person meetings are in Washington, D.C., and then Tampa and Sarasota, Florida. Okay. But we also cater to a large online community nationwide.
Got it. Okay. So the sentiment among investors right now, what are you guys seeing?
I'm trying to make sure people stay excited. Yeah. Anyone that's been in the business is at least done their first deal. So let's say they start to move up to intermediate, advanced. There's an excitement because good days are coming. When things get more difficult in the general market, people need investors more than ever. Interestingly, though, beginners that haven't done anything yet, they just seem to want to like, oh, it's not the right time. Like, well, wait a minute. Last year it wasn't the right time because the market was hot. Now it's not the right time because the market's not. Gosh, when is it going to be the right time? So people say that, and I go, that's not the case. It's getting easier for investors what's coming forward, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah. I started buying in 08, 09.
Yeah,
and it was, incredible. Like incredible time to buy, but also super scary for a lot of people because they didn't know what was happening, and I was so green. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was just like, no, I'm just going to go buy a house. It works for me right now in this moment. So I'm going to make it work. And the
results were,
they were great. Yeah. They were great. I bought a bunch of $20,000 houses. They worked out well.
Yeah.
Wrote a lot of notes.
You go back there. If you could go back, you'd buy 3 times as many.
For sure.
So those days are here again now. So people ought to be doing 3 times as many as they thought they could do to do it and make it happen. Because I think there's very happy days ahead, particularly on the investment side.
Yeah, I agree. Tom, man, I think we leave it at that. That's a great segue. I appreciate you jumping on, sharing your knowledge. I'm going to leave a link to all your contact information in the show notes. And yeah, man, it's good catching up, hearing what you're working on, what you're doing.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome, Tom. Take care. Did you know that 80% of the agents we speak with got into real estate in order to gain passive income so they could obtain financial freedom and become work optional? If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. We'll catch you on the next episode.